Me a minute. We're just picking up on Facebook. It's preparing to go live. There we are.
Good.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our first protocol training of the year for 2023. We have a few sessions planned for this year. My name is Aditi Joshi, and I'm the Vice Chair for Austin Sister Cities. And today with us, we have Kevin Clark, who is a linguist and protocol specialist from Austin Sister Cities, from Austin Community College, who will be working with Austin Sister Cities for all the protocol trainings. And Kevin will take over from here. He has requested for questions to be asked at the end of the session so he can give you a better answer. And Kevin, if there are is there a feedback that you would like from the attendees today, please feel free to go ahead and ask them. And with that, I will hand over to you, Kevin. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Aditi. Welcome everyone here today. It's a great way to spend a Friday at noon. Today, our session will be about, hold on just a second. Here we go. Today, our session will be about, I'm going to back up just a second here, go forward, about these 5 Asian countries that are connected with Austin Sister Cities. In the interest of time, and because we have more of a focus on these, we're mostly going to be doing China and Japan and India, and we'll have a brief mention of Taiwan and South Korea. Well, let's start with a nice stereotype here. I think this is very good if you'll remember Indiana Jones. In fact, right here in front of us, we actually have a young man who, as a grown man, had just recently won an Academy Award. But here is a stereotype of Americans encountering Asian culture. It's, you might say, Pan-Asian here. Also an older time, if you go back 80 years. And here we go.
Excuse me, sir. Do you have anything simple, like soup?
What exactly was it they say was stolen?
A sacred rock.
You see, Captain? A rock.
Okay, so there is, with stereotypes come fear, and with fear comes a lack of understanding of other cultures, and that's what we're here for today. So let's get started with China. I'm going to start here with some fun facts for each country, and then we'll get into greeting, meeting, dining, and refining. Refining in particular of women in the business world and how it may be different in these Asian countries versus in the United States. First of all, soccer was invented in China 2,200 years ago. You may or may not know this, although by the map, China has 4 time zones. Technically, everything is set to Beijing time, so there's just one time zone, which means that if you're in the far west there, sunrise can be as late as 10 a.m. technically. And finally, this is very interesting. If you have parents that are at least 60 years old, it's illegal not to visit them regularly. Okay, so let's talk about China and greetings. Now, a lot of this in the protocol is, of course, not about the content of what you do in meetings with Chinese colleagues and the other countries' colleagues, but the fine points that are largely nonverbal. They're not verbal, they're not particular words used. We'll see a little bit of that. But these particulars that can almost be taken for granted if you're in the culture. Now, I will say to start with, I lived in Belgium and partly in France and United Kingdom. And one of the things I found was the difference in kissing cheeks. In Paris, it's twice. In Belgium, it's 3 times. And in the French countryside, it's 4 times. And if you don't get it right, it's very awkward and uncomfortable. People there don't think twice about it. Now, that is something to keep in mind as you meet with colleagues. And of course, we're largely talking here about going to China, but this also involves Chinese colleagues who come to the United States and you want to make them feel welcome. So as we can see here, you do shake hands, individual to individual. If it is an individual to a group, they will often applaud because it's quicker than shaking hands, and you applaud back. And of course, the order of shaking hands is very important. It goes with seniority. It's with the most senior or the oldest person first. And if you're not sure, because the senior person may not be the oldest, it is usually the first person to enter the room. So the order of people coming in, you may observe, or of course be told in advance, and that's very important. Now, this goes partly to the idea of authority in Chinese culture and to a Confucian system that's thousands of years old. There's one extra feature here that's kind of unique to China is the fist and palm salute. It's for formal occasions. You may be there during Chinese New Year and you get to say, you can learn a few words of Chinese and say Happy New Year. And what it involves is the hand, the open hand over a fist. Now I want you to notice in the picture here, for men, it's the left hand over the right fist. And for women, it's the right hand over the left fist. But you have to be careful if it is what you might call a negative ceremony, like a funeral, it is in reverse. So men put their right hand over their left fist and women put their left hand over their right fist. And this is very important. Okay, so if you want to see a little example of this a little more live, let's take a look at this video.
新的一年，好事连连，牛气冲天。
祝所有的朋友们牛年平平安安，收获满满。
给大家拜年了。
There we go. So this is in more formal occasions, but this is one of those things, again, if you can pick up on this and understand when to use it and to use it with your Chinese colleagues, puts you into good stead for whatever that content you would like to convey in the meeting when it comes up. Let's also look at titles and names. You are supposed to be more formal. You want to use a title and a surname unless you're asked to use a given name. So you would say Miss Wong rather than Julia. Use a standard or professional title, Mr., Miss, Mrs., Doctor, and then Director or Mayor, and then the surname. So it's a rather long thing. So here's an introduction. Here's a sample at the bottom here. You would say the title, full name, and company name, like Mr. Eric Jones, General Manager of American Electric Vehicles. The point is to err on the side of formality, because if you are informal, that could be seen as a breach of protocol. And if someone says, please no, call me, and then their first name, then that's fine, but only if you're asked to do so. Attire. In business settings, your Chinese colleagues will wear conservative, semi-formal, or business casual attire. Of course, semi-formal means a suit, and business casual means, as I'm wearing today, a collared shirt and a blazer. Generally, men will wear sports coats and ties, but they also may wear slacks or khakis and open neck shirts without coats and ties in summer. So they move from semi-formal to business casual. Women usually wear dresses and pantsuits. They avoid heavy makeup and dangling jewelry. This is not unlike Western culture, and I believe the pandemic will be modifying this, because even in the US, we're seeing a lot more men who are not wearing ties, replacing ties. We don't see it here in the picture. For example, a pocket square. So it adds a little accent, makes it a little bit asymmetrical. And that may be the trend. So a very formal meeting, maybe, well, semi-formal attire, a suit and tie, but it looks like the trend is going toward, and if China matches this, toward an open shirt and a jacket, but no tie. Gift giving is very important in Chinese culture, including business meetings. It's important to exchange a modest gift with colleagues at a first meeting, or for a host or hostess at their home if you're invited there. It can be something like chocolates or brandy. They're consumable items. They're not very expensive, but they simply represent, excuse me, the appreciation of the invitation. You always give gifts in the sequence of introduction. You can do things like cigarettes, liquor, desk items, books, things that particularly may represent the US, or in our case, Austin. And at a senior level, if it is the CEO, et cetera, you might instead bring more expensive items. It can even be the same item if it is a more expensive liquor, for example. You'll notice the nice red package here. You want to avoid black and white items because that can symbolize tragedy or death. We're going to see this throughout Asia. The color of items is very important because it can symbolize something different it does here. In fact, even the opposite of what it does here. Okay, just a brief, quick reminder here of there's various things for birthdays, weddings, but a big one that is particularly Chinese is the Chinese New Year. This is when envelopes are exchanged. There's usually money inside. An even number is better, but avoid the number 4. These are things, of course, you can look up that are very particular because there's a lot of symbols involved with how much money you give, the type of money, how you give it, the color of the envelope, and that sort of thing. Okay, just some quick ones here too. This is the kind of thing you print out, carry with you. The problem is in Chinese, in Mandarin, the word for death and 4 are close together, so you avoid the number 4. If that's your lucky number, don't use that in China. You'll notice here 2 things you may be thinking. Let's say you want to bring something from Austin FC as a gift. Well, avoid, our color is green after all, avoid an Austin FC baseball cap because to wear a green hat in China, if you give that to a man, means his wife is cheating on him. It's a cuckold hat, you might say. So there are things about this you have to be careful of. Simply, you would never know because unless you happen to know that the sounds of the words are similar. Okay, so let's get into meetings. Off the bat, Chinese business professionals may be suspicious of Westerners and rely upon astute precision in negotiations. So one of the first things you want to do, of course, is to be on time. Being late is considered rude. And prepare. Meetings can go on very long. It could be 10 days long with delays. There's periods of silence. It's not fly in and fly out in a rushed sort of thing. You have to go at their pace. Even if a deal is signed, it's still open to negotiation. So there's a lot of patience in here, getting to know your colleagues getting to know you as well. Business cards, of course, very important. We're going to see that for all our cultures. We're in a transition period as they often go electronic with QR codes, but the old-fashioned, nicely printed cards, which of course these days are fairly inexpensive through various like Vistaprint, various companies, they're always exchanged in business meetings. Your best bet is to have them printed in English on one side and Chinese on the other. And I've been seeing some reports of make sure the translation is done well, so that you don't say something that's off base or insulting or simply that appears lazy in the translation from one side to the other. You always use both hands. The card should be upright for the person you're presenting it to. And of course, it's most appropriate if they are Chinese, that Chinese side of the card be on top. And of course, study them, even if you just appear to be looking at them, and you can place them on a table or in a card case. As we're going to see with most cultures, it is considered rude and a little demeaning if you bend the card or just stick it in your pocket, etc. People often have card carrying cases, not only for their own cards, but for the cards that people present them. But as you're meeting, it's fine to leave it on the table, and it might be good as a reference to see who it is you're talking to. Cultural heritage is represented in language, as in a lot of places. So you should prepare for meetings in Chinese. Again, here's an example of a card in English and in Chinese. Be careful about where you are. We're going to see, well, we have another section on Taiwan, but even in Hong Kong, they use traditional characters, but often in China, they use simplified characters. Of course, if Chinese is not your best proficiency, you can bring an interpreter or ask that one be provided. That way you're making sure you're getting your message across. Now, any true interpretation, I've worked as an interpreter myself, the interpreter primarily interprets into their native language. So it's likely to be someone who has English as their primary language, so that there's less of a chance of misinterpretation. In fact, all interpreters at the UN interpret into their native language. Okay, now there's a very important word, if I have this correct, miazi in Chinese. It's an untranslatable word, but it roughly means face, and it can be saving face or giving face. This comes to many things. For example, never point to somebody, especially at their face. You never want to embarrass a shopkeeper, a colleague, or anyone on the street or in a business meeting. It's a very, very important element of Chinese culture, that regardless of how the meeting goes, that the other person is allowed their dignity. We do kind of have the term in English to save face, but it's also to give face by giving gifts, interacting professionally and personally, and showing self-control and strength of character. So this is a very vital part. It takes, because it's untranslatable, it takes a lot of words to boil down to what miazi is. Okay, now let's move to dining. So of course, meetings may spill over to a large luncheon or a dinner. And it may even be something like a 12-course banquet. You want to arrive exactly on time, never early, because that implies you're hungry and you can't wait to eat. Kind of like that's not unlike a dinner party in the United States. If someone invites you at 7, you never show at 7, actually, and certainly not at 6:45. You could arrive alone or with your secretary, but you don't bring your spouse. So it is fully a business meeting. After the host has begun at the head of the table, then you can eat. So again, seniority matters. Who is the head of the table? Of course, if it's like this round table, it depends. You'll know at that point who your senior colleague is. And if you're there long enough, of course, you can reciprocate and invite everyone else to a dinner that you set up. Okay, well, of course, toasting is very important. It's a big part of any formal Chinese gathering. And let's see, it's usually after the first course. Everybody gets to eat a little bit, and then there's a nice toast. This is not unlike, say, an American wedding where a toast is not done right at the beginning. People have already begun to eat, and then they clink their glass. And note that a shot glass, as we see here in the photo, is for toasting, and you say ganbai, which is bottoms up. And always accept a drink. It's rude not to accept one. But if you don't really want to drink that much alcohol, you're free to sip. But the point is you don't refuse the drink. Okay. Of course, utensils are a very big deal in the way you use them in China. There's very precise rules. You always leave some food on your plate to honor your host generosity. For example, if you eat everything on your plate, it implies, again, like showing up early, that I had to eat because I'm so hungry, which doesn't really recognize the sumptuousness, the beauty, the taste of the food. You can refuse food for personal, religious, or medical reasons, but you give the reason. My doctor says I can't have any more carbs. In other words, instead of rejecting the food outright as if they've picked a bad restaurant or the host or hostess has cooked an unappealing meal, you're simply saying, it's not about you, it's about me, and this is my own personal situation. Something that Americans have to get used to quite a lot is it's okay to slurp and belch when it involves soup, because it means it's good. And of course, we were raised quite opposite. You always push your spoon to the back of the bowl so as not to spill any on the front toward your person, and to sit lightly, and it's quite the opposite. So it's something you have to get used to, but I'm sure someone will be ahead of you. You'll hear it and you do the same. Finally, you want to place your chopsticks on the table or a chopstick rest when finished and not on the plate. So here you can see just a little quick sum up of how to do things here. And of course, the advantage of a table full of people is you can follow the lead in what your colleagues do, especially one who knows that you're not familiar with these sorts of customs in China. So you leave on, you leave some on the plate, let them know you had plenty to eat. You don't dig through it like you're trying to reject part of what's on the plate. And you don't worry about tipping. Of course, a lot of chopsticks things you might want to look at. You don't spear your food with them. You don't tap your bowl. You don't stick your chopsticks right in the rice because it looks like incense sticks, which is something done at funerals. You see some very formal things about tapping your fingers. Don't flip over a fish because it symbolizes capsizing the boat. Things you may not think of, but just as a reminder, and you watch your Chinese colleagues and see what they do. Okay, let's move a little beyond this. We talk about chopsticks and spoons, when to use chopsticks, when to use spoons. And I'd like to show you the best way to pull all this together is a clip from an episode of a show called Confucius Was a Foodie. And here we see Americans gathered to learn how to eat a meal in China.
I'm working my way through the Chinese lunar solar calendar with all its festivals and celebrations. And where there's a festival, there will always be a meal. As I've been invited to various celebrations, I wanted to start by learning my manners. I've asked Sharon Schweitzer, author of the multicultural guide Access to Asia, to lend a hand. My husband Bosco is joining me, along with two young women we know from back home, Emma and Michaela.
So,
Sharon, we're all looking at that now. What do we do?
Well, as the host, it's my obligation to serve. Provide one of those to you.
Do we self-condiment or do you condiment?
Self-condiment.
Okay.
They're so deliciously looking. Look at that.
The two sets of chopsticks, the one that was in your napkin is for you.
Yes.
The one here is, this extra set is for you to use to help serve the people on your right and left. But you would not use these chopsticks to put in the dish. And you always serve from the Lazy Susan.
So this dish never gets picked up, but you can
That's
pick
right.
up your dish.
Yes.
Yeah.
So shall we?
Of course. Emma, why did you want to come and learn about the whole etiquette thing?
I'm actually studying here, so I'm going to all these local places, and I don't know what I'm doing. So I just wanted to make sure I'm not embarrassing myself.
Yeah. Oh, look at that. Oh, see, that's so important because that whole idea of even just who's going to pay is so...
It can get stressful.
It can get totally stressful.
This looks amazing.
So as the host, what are your obligations?
Pour drinks for our guests. We also serve our guests, and we just make sure our guests are comfortable. We also take care of the bill discreetly.
Oh, see, that's a good thing.
What happens is they will take care of the bill out of sight. You shouldn't even see that happen.
Shall we turn it around?
And
Love the leaf.
I do too. Isn't this beautiful?
Wow.
So where are you supposed to put your chopsticks when you put them down? Just across the
Across,
plate?
yes.
Okay. Would
Across diagonal.
Would that be rude if they were just kind of on half on the
They're
plate?
leaning?
That would not be ideal.
Okay.
The best,
Michaela.
got it. If they had chopstick rests, would put them there. Since they don't, you want to put them up to the side.
I have a question regarding the taking the photographs of the food.
I would ask the host if it's all right. And most of them are going to be very flattered that you enjoy the food that much.
So am I allowed to take a photo?
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you.
How would the server know who is at the head of the table, who's the host? or
not
head of the
random,
table
right?
might even be a Western term.
The server would know the guest of honors to the right of the host.
Okay.
And the server will know who the host is because they've made the arrangements. And whoever
Got you.
extended the invitation is the host.
And then whoever extending the invitation is paying also.
In Asia, there's no going Dutch. You know, there's no going Dutch.
Now
in Asia.
you're talking.
I've noticed that. It's hard to split bills. I actually sort of laughed at when I asked to split a bill with my
Really?
friend. Yeah.
Oh, well,
Is that
you know
rude?
why? Here's why. Because there's what's called guanxi, or there's reciprocity. So your friend took you out and you had dinner with your friend. Well, next time it's your turn.
Oh.
So this is the crispy boneless duck. You can wrap it
Nice.
on a pancake, everything together.
Oh, look at how
beautiful they
that
are.
is gorgeous.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
You know, historically in China, you never used your hands for anything.
Right.
And everything was the chopstick or the spoon.
Yes.
But as we all know, there are modern manners. Once you put the duck in your pancake, you
Then
can
you can-
actually pick it up with your hands.
See, it's looking up for me now.
It's
Now
looking up for you.
looking up.
You're liking that, aren't you?
I'm liking that. Otherwise, now what does that mean?
That is
Demerits
okay.
your
See,
pain.
now,
Is this a
as
good
a
luck?
host, I am going to reach right over there, and I'm going to help him with my communal chopstick.
See, she just saved
Yeah,
you.
all of them.
There
Thank
you are. If you can't use chopsticks, don't ask for a fork. You will so entertain your host. If you really struggle and try to use the chopstick, just go ahead and struggle.
Chinese manners trace all the way back to my foodie friend Confucius. Eating etiquette was originally derived from ancient worship rituals and came into practice earlier than any other etiquette system in imperial China. It was encouraged by Confucianism because it was said to help rule the country and educate its people.
I'll leave that.
Knowing what to do at table makes it a lot more comfortable to attend a banquet. And I've gotten one of the most coveted invitations of the New Year's season.
There we go. Guanxi or Guanxi, Guanxi, is a vital part of Chinese networking and socializing. It's all connected. It's eating, meeting, the intersociability all goes together. I might add to this that we didn't quite see here, but it looked like they're a little hungry. A little trick is to have a little snack before you go to a dinner or lunch or luncheon, because when you're hungry, your primal urges take over and it's harder to follow new customs. So don't go hungry. Okay, just one last thing about China and refining is the role of women in business. China is still a male-dominated society, but there is an aim for sexual equality. Women are usually included in negotiating teams, but they go without a spouse. And a couple of things to avoid smoking and drinking. The Western women may do so moderately, but probably Chinese women are smoking more than American women as it is. Okay, now in the interest of time, if you want more information about this, feel free to contact me. But Taiwan, well, technically by the Chinese standards is part of China, but you can't assume because of the similarities that they are the same. They've evolved differently in the last, 3/4 of a century. So I'm going to skip through this just a little bit. There's a lot of good things here. And I'm going to skip through South Korea here as well. So our focus will be on Japan and India. Okay, so let's take a look at Japan. Some fun facts. Japan has the highest number of vending machines in the world, and you can get things even like dog wigs. It's quite fascinating if you're there. Even alleys have a whole line of vending machines. They're everywhere. It has one of the world's lowest crime rates. The most common crimes are things like stealing bicycles or umbrellas, and it has a very low homicide rate. Cleaning is part of the education in many schools. So students are made to clean toilets. How about that? Along with classrooms in the whole school area. Okay, so let's talk about Japan and greetings. And let's take a look at attire. This is what you're getting ready for before you go to the meeting. Men tend to wear black, charcoal, or navy suit, white shirt, or tie. They're usually expected to unbutton their jacket during the meeting, which means getting down to business. Women tend to wear pants or a skirt. The skirt should be no more than 10 centimeters or 4 inches above the knee, usually white, pale blue, or pale pink blouse. And the jacket is expected to stay buttoned during the meeting. So there's a distinction between men's and women's expectations. And as I've recently discovered, even post-pandemic, face masks are still common, even outside. I know this is true if you happen to travel to, say, Honolulu. They have a large number of Japanese tourists, and they sell face masks there. They call them aloha mask because they even wear them in Honolulu, and this is even before the pandemic. Shaking hands. So we have the issue here we're going to see in just a second about bowing and shaking hands. You can shake hands softly and briefly, no firm handshakes. Don't shake with both hands, don't squeeze or cut the other's hand, and you don't make a lot of eye contact. You make some, you have to know where you are, but not much eye contact. Now, another don't is, we see this often in the news, you don't shake hands and bow at the same time. It's like in America, say if you're hugging and shaking hands at the same time, it really doesn't make sense. But as we can see here, a certain president and a certain prime minister are meeting. I believe we could say foreigners of high position could be forgiven because it is the foreigner making a best effort, and that is appreciated. Now, in bowing, which is still very common, men and women do it differently. As you see here, men keep their arms on the side of their torso, but women keep their hands in front of their lower belly. In this case, she's a little covered here, but you see they do it differently. If you've wondered about how far to bend, this is very interesting. We're going to concentrate on the 30-degree one. The further you bend in a bow, the more formal it is. On business meetings, it's at 30 degrees, and it is for greeting and entering meetings and interacting with superiors. If it's people of the same status and you barely bow, you're just bent a little bit. And if there's a really bad day and you want to say sorry or asking big favors, you bend the full 45 degrees. Business cards are very important. You exchange these while you're bowing with both hands. And if you have one side in Japanese and one side in English, of course, you share them with the Japanese side on top, and it faces the partner, your colleague. Title and rank should be very clear on that card. So the level at which you can negotiate is clear to your partner. Again, as in China, you leave them on the table during the meeting. You want to make sure never to damage the card. It's an insult to the person that gave it to you. You don't bend or write on them. But if you want to take notes, you're free to have a notepad, or you can take a picture with your phone and do things electronically. Now, if I understand this correctly, actually with both hands, you can actually give a card with your left hand and take one with the right. You have to do a little negotiating there with your stance, but the bow goes with the card. Now, design can be very interesting. Again, you can have double-sided with Japanese on one side and English on the other. You see these are very creative ones with part of their face. And you might ask your partner to translate their Japanese-only card if they give you one that's only Japanese. Or you can use your phone, of course, on the spot to get a machine translation into English. But of course, machine translations have their problems. That's why interpreters will never be out of business. And you can ask them, is this translation too simple? So it shows curiosity, and their card shows curiosity in the partner. And you might even say, oh, that's interesting. The kanji there for gold, isn't that correct? And it's showing your appreciation of some knowledge of the language. Be aware that you may be asked things along the way. Here I put in parentheses about things like ethnicity, which is less of a sensitive topic in Japan. Now you might use an app like 8card, or of course in Japan, most people use the Line app. I have a friend who's an American who lives in Taiwan, and he uses Line. It's very popular there. It's less popular here, but of course you can install it on your phone. and with a message include the QR code for to get their the electronic version of their business card. Let me just show you some things that are kind of hard to describe. Obviously, this is just very basic, but just let's look at some nonverbals as you're talking in. It's not the content, not the words or the verbal, but the nonverbal here.
私おいでこっちいやいやいやいやいやああ12345678910ピース丸×
Now, I found that particularly fascinating because there may be simple ways of doing things like numbers that you didn't think of, but in particularly the one where she says to come close. In America, that almost looks like the same nonverbal gestures used to tell somebody to go away. So it can be important to review this a little bit because during a meeting, you may get the wrong idea and misinterpret the content, the verbal, because of these nonverbals. Okay. Now, gift giving is very important. This could be something, if a Japanese visitor is, say, in Austin or you're visiting in Japan, what sort of gifts are appropriate? Well, of course, it can be well-known stores, but actually right here in Austin, like Costco, but also something local, like individually wrapped Lamb's candies. As we see here, they have, you see even one of them has the word, two of them have the word Texas on there. They also have other items that are particularly sort of a Tex-Mex bent to them. But you can also set up, if a Japanese colleague is here and would like to take gifts back to Japan with them, you can have it set up so they're not rushing around at the last minute. We have a lot of nice options in our Austin airport. You have things set up for them. How many people do they want to get things for? And that could be ready for them to go before they fly back to Japan. You can also buy more expensive items for established relationships. For example, whiskey, which is very common. Japan even has their own whiskey now. Hard liquors have gotten more popular in Japan. And of course, like Austin FC shirts are great. And in advance, you go somewhere like Costco and they're quite reasonable there. Things that will be harder or more expensive or more confusing to get at the airport. So you want a national kind of feel, but also more the local. Okay, time. How does time work in Japan? On time is 10 minutes early. On time is late. So get there early and recognize in groups, there's a hierarchy, older over younger, male over female, senior over junior. Something that generally we don't recognize in the US, but you have to be aware that's how things are done there. A very interesting feature in Japanese culture that we would consider insulting, but they consider complimentary, is falling asleep. It means I'm so busy that I'm falling asleep. It's not because your presentation is boring. And in fact, some colleagues may tend to be asleep to show commitment. Now, if you really need to make an important point, you don't want to embarrass anyone, but you might use some louder words to kind of prompt them to awaken, but particularly those pretending to be asleep. Okay, now let's move to dining. It's vital for business relationships, as it is throughout Asia, as we saw in China. If you don't want an instant refill of your glass, keep it partially full, and keep some food on the plate out of respect, again, as in China. Accept toast and courses in the meal, but wait for the host to begin, not unlike in the US. And you never pour your own glass. You pour your companion's glass and allow yours to be filled. So even if there's two of you can fill each other's glasses. You can make special requests. If you have dietary restrictions, say you're vegetarian or you're gluten-free or you don't drink alcohol, but you need to give a reason. I'm diabetic, so I have too many carbs. I have celiac disease, I can't have gluten. I don't have any impression you would say I'm an alcoholic. I can't have alcohol, but you might say I'm trying to cut back on alcohol. They wanted a reason so it doesn't insult the food. Now you have to accept that it may not work. For example, there may be no meat in the rice that you're served, but there may be meat in the sauce. There's only so much that can be done. You note here's a nice vegetarian meal that even includes the wonderful lotus root that has the holes there. It's delicious. So you can make requests, and that's not insulting. The insulting thing is not to eat food that you realize that you maybe can't eat because it's seen as an insult to the host. Okay, so again, back to pouring drinks. Never pour for yourself. You let somebody else pour. You hold your arm or sleeve with your left hand and pour your drink with your right hand. Notice, use that left hand too. And be aware that the Japanese tend to drink, they drink less than they used to, but they drink generally more than Americans do. Again, don't play with chopsticks. We saw this in China. When you enter a home, you take off your shoes. It's considered rude not to. It protects the floor. You're often given slippers, even in public restaurants. You get slippers to go into the bathroom. Some basic tips here, but let's move ahead, if you would, about using chopsticks and your place settings. So if you're in Japan, someone may take you to a typical Japanese restaurant. I know when I was there, an American I know who lives there took me down this back alley to this tiny place with 4 tables I would have never found. It's wonderful. But they'll also take you to the Japanese version of American food, and this maybe is the best if you're familiar, that Christmas in Japan is celebrated with KFC. So this is a common element. Likewise, if someone in Japan is visiting Austin, you want to go national, but also local. So you may take them to, this is Kura, which is in Austin. There's about 12 of them in the US. It's a revolving a sushi place. This is, you might say, an American version of Japanese food, or you can take them to another sort of Asian restaurant. But you also want to take them somewhere local. They're familiar with hamburgers, but maybe they're not familiar with P. Terry's and their sort of mid-century modern design. Okay, finally, women in business, dresses and suits and subtle colors are fine. It's okay to invite a Japanese businessman to lunch or dinner, but you let him choose the restaurant. These are subtle navigations. You also might have to make your stance be assertive. Someone may ask you to get coffee if you're a woman, and you say simply, well, I am an engineer. You know, I'm not your server, essentially. You don't say what you're not, but you say what you are. But at the same time, in Japanese culture, even a well-established woman in a company may be expected to quit her job if she becomes a mother. So there is this interplay of old and new in Japanese culture in terms of women. Now, our last stop here, if you'll bear with me here, I know we're running a little late, started a little late. But let's take a look at India. Some fun facts: the Indians invented many things that we take for granted, especially things that are modern. It's a very young population. Half the population is under 25, and that's important because India is poised to replace China as the world's most populous country. And but people are familiar and curious about America. So a common thing is taxi drivers know a lot about the US, and they can even name the last 3 presidents. Okay, so let's talk about the issue again of shaking hands versus bowing. Shaking hands is common, but there is still the pose, a slight bow with the words namaste. Now, during the pandemic and on, this is actually coming to America a little more, a way to introduce yourself to a whole room full of people very quickly without having to shake hands and without having to touch others. It's hard to know where that's going to go. So handshaking has moved from west to east, and namaste and bow has moved from east to west. You always address people with formal titles, and gifts can be given as tokens. Of course, one thing, a big nonverbal you want to look at in India, it's kind of represented by the infinity symbol there. The sideways 8 is yes. So as you can see in this GIF here, you have to be careful about what is yes and no in that nonverbal. And yes might just indicate agreement. I hear what you say, but it doesn't necessarily mean somebody agrees with the content. Okay, and they also use softeners. These are very important. G means yes. Softener means that you're being polite about your answer. For example, instead of just mummy, you say mummy G, etc. It's not unlike san in Japanese to give it a softened edge. Okay, now more modern attire for men is a semi-formal attire, such as dark suit. Again, we've seen in the US. It's probably less formal for younger men. And again, you see the gentleman here, I actually found this in an Indian fashion catalog. Again, this may be the bit. We're going to go with business casual, which means no tie, but perhaps a pocket square. Women may combine a tunic and trousers, often blue and white. And again, it's probably often less formal for younger Indians. And again, we saw quite a large part of the population is young. Keep in mind that India is a big place. To the north, it's more conservative and cooler, except in summer when it gets warm. And in the south, it's less formal and cooler linen is used. So simply by climate and by cultural climate, dress can differ. So pardon here, I'm going to finish up in just a minute. Business cards, again, are important. If the partner doesn't show, be persistent so that you can reach agreement. Again, you present your business card to the oldest or most senior first. But of course, QR codes are common, although printed cards are still used in service industries. Be aware of verbals too. When someone says, I will try, that's instead of saying no, because it's its own softener. It's a way not to sound negative. And again, yes and no are done, performed differently. For dining, of course, it's very important. Arrive later than the arranged time. Like in the US, 7 o'clock dinner party, you don't show up at 7, you show up at 7:25, right? You allow the host to serve you. And even if there's something you don't want to eat or can't eat, you leave it on the plate so it's not insulting. If you use hands, use just the first 3 fingers and thumb. And you can use a spoon. You can take food from a communal dish and use bread to scoop up food. Okay. So there's a move to lazy Susans to share dishes. You allow the oldest person to start. Make sure your hands are clean. There's a move also to having a colleague have dinner outside with more of a nuclear family, and a restaurant for a very special experience like a molecular gastronomy restaurant. It's okay to make dietary requests. I don't drink for health reasons. And it's also okay to bring your own water bottle. You can purchase it right before you go to the person's house. But you also keep a distance, arm's length, and avoid touching others. So let's end here. India is a male-dominated society, but there's more acceptance in the less conservative South and Central parts of India. And women may not be included in some conversations, but it's okay for a woman to invite an Indian man to a business lunch and pay. Now, we don't really have time. I was going to give you the overall, but we could use Gerda Hofstede, cultural researcher, to show cultural dimensions. I'm just going to jump right to this, show you a couple of things here. You can actually put in these countries, pardon, and see where the US differs in orange here. The US is very individualistic. Most Asian cultures, here are the others, are much more collectivist. That's why dinner is different, a luncheon is different, how you interact with colleagues is different. And that concludes our slides for today. Apologize, we're right at 12:30 here, but does anybody have any questions or comments, corrections? Thank you for joining me here today, joining us here. I must say it's afternoon, and seeing all the food really makes me avoid manners and want to go right for some Indian or Japanese food in particular. Well, thank you, Erin. I appreciate it. Aditi, I got to hear what you have to say about India. Did I get that right?
It was very close. I mean, full disclosure, I haven't lived in India like as an Indian citizen for 31 years. It's been a while, but yeah, very close on the differences between North and South. And of course, the weather conditions there are quite interesting. People think India is a very hot country throughout, but you know, the North gets very cold, quite similar to the US.
I see. Yeah, good. Yeah, I think that's, well, you know, North and South US, people are a little surprised. Is it hot? Yeah, it's 112. Yeah.
It's 112 in the summer in the north, and it literally is. And in the winters, it drops into the 20s and 30s.
Oh,
so like a city like Delhi, the capital of India, in the summers there is load shedding and it's over 100 degrees. And in the winters, it's so cold. I mean, the smog pollutes this. I mean, the smog comes down and totally pollutes the city. There's low visibility. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Wow.
Just, you know, navigating the situation, navigating the traffic in those conditions.
That's amazing. And also, if I understand correctly, affects the cuisine. Isn't the cuisine hotter in the South?
It is. It is hotter in the South than it is in the North. But it's richer in the North just because it's colder in the North.
Yeah, like most places in the world, right? The hottest food comes from the hottest places, right? So
yeah,
Mexico.
Because it kills bacterial infections. So when you apparently when you eat spicy food, it kills bacterial infections and keeps your immune system strong. And after a couple of minutes of eating spicy food, your body actually cools down. So supposedly.
Bianca, that's why I'm so healthy. Oh yeah, yeah. People are surprised. I'm from North Carolina originally. People are surprised that I like really spicy food. I don't know where it came from, but yeah, it's like if you've had Indian food in Britain, it can make you cry because it is not hot. It is not hot. Yeah. So those things come into play. Yeah, and part of it is really interesting because India is a very big country, and we tend to be very unitary with the way we see things. And you know, when you travel as an American, people say Americans do this. I'm like, well, not where I'm from, right? It is a big, yeah. Less so in Taiwan, for example, but definitely in China and India. Yeah.
True. Yeah. But this was a great session, Kevin. You know, as usual, you tie all the elements in so well. I'm interested to hear if anybody else has any questions. Erin, Carter, Bianca, do you all have any questions? Or
I just had a clarification of something from early in the presentation, just to make sure I understood it correctly, regarding China. You said if you're individual meeting an individual, you would exchange a handshake. But if it's an individual meeting a group, did you say that the for efficiency, the group might just clap?
They might applaud.
Okay.
And the response back is to applaud as one person back to them.
Okay. That's
Yeah,
what I thought you said. I was
also
like,
that one
how
too.
interesting.
I think it's just efficient time. And I think it's connected to the Indian idea that some Americans have, Westerners try to adapt of a bow, because you can bow quickly to people, but it's very hard in a room full of people, and they may be on the other side of a table, a conference table. So I would imagine American walking will applause you like, oh, did I win something? Right. Yeah. That's kind of, that's a bit, I saw that as odd as well. Yeah. But
yeah, you could misinterpret it if you're like, oh, wow, they're applauding.
Oh, I'm a great person. Yeah. As opposed to, you know, so you see it and you hear it, but they could be 10 feet away. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
I think the most surprising thing is that you applaud back, because imagine if somebody applauded you, applauded back, like, what are you doing? You don't, you're the honored person. You don't applaud back, but you would there. Yeah. So you can see how one little thing could set off the whole meeting the wrong way, regardless of the content of a meeting, if you don't get it right. But you'll notice in all of these, like with Obama bowing and shaking hands, that there's an appreciation that you know anything about the culture at all, even if you get it wrong. I know that I had a Hungarian visit stay with me, and the first thing he wanted to do was buy a cowboy hat, and he looked ridiculous. He said, let's go out to dinner. I'm like, not with that hat on. You know, and we had visiting Danes come to ACC for a program twice a year. And the first thing they want to do is buy like baseball caps, but they don't look quite right. Do you know what I mean? Like it's that uncanny valley, as they say in video, that look almost real, but not quite, you know, in animation. But it's beautiful because they're trying. They're not saying it must be like Denmark here, it must be like Hungary. And that's the beauty of it, is that you can get things wrong, but also you can watch people after all, right? You can see what they do. Like at dinner, just watch what be a step behind, don't be a step ahead. And that's why you should always eat something before you go to a dinner. That's true in the US too, right? That's an old standard. That's what I had 6 years of cotillion. And yes, because the last thing you want to do is to be rude because you're grabbing for food, right? True. You go a little bit hungry, just a little bit.
Yeah. A little bit hungry, yeah. You know, Kevin, I'm glad you brought that up, because when you're in India, when you go to a dinner party and if you're invited at 8:30 in the evening, chances are people will show up from 9:30 onwards. So anyone who started early or is at the event early, they're going to be ravenous by the time everybody arrives, and drinks are served and appetizers are served, a finger food or whatever hors d'oeuvres. And then by the time dinner's served, it's a good 2 to 3 hours down. So it certainly helps to eat before you go.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Right. And yeah, the appetizers or finger food are only meant to be, as the French say, sort of an amuse-bouche, right? It's only to kind of get you going. You're not going, I'm going to fill up on this, because that's rude. And you've taken it from other people, right? You know, I got to tell you, I've even cheated. I forgot, and I ate a kind bar in the car right before dinner. And I'm so glad I did. It's just what you just said, because it was supposed to start at 7. I got there at 7:30, and we didn't eat till 9:30. And that's a long time to go if you had lunch at noon. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the point here is too, at least in America, you know, customs, but if you're having to remember customs and you're hungry, they don't go together well, because one is primal and one is cultural. And you've done this faux pas because you're hungry, not a good idea.
Good point. Very good point.
Sweet.
So I don't think Carter said he doesn't have any questions. So I think that concludes our session today, Kevin. Carter and Erin, we have a series of trainings coming out throughout the year, and we will post those out in preparation in the coming weeks. So please keep an eye out for them. We have Europe, we have Australia, we have Africa, we have Latin America. So we will be having one training every quarter. So I think in July, we have the next training session. And we hope you attend those trainings as well.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm glad to see everyone here today. And by the way, feel free to send, thank you, Carter. I appreciate that. Feel free to send corrections or little things that you found out, because, you know, all these information sources may not be entirely right, you know, or something just interesting that could be added. I would appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you
We
very
look
much.
forward to your free feedback, suggestions, and yeah, Kevin, thank you so much. And as usual, I'm looking forward to seeing you again.
Likewise, Aditi. Take care, everyone. I'll see you in July.
Take care. Have a good weekend.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you very much. Thank you.